Brady Dalton didn't expect to meet a millionaire the morning. His 5-year-old son spilled orange juice on the last clean shirt he owned. He was halfway through cleaning the sticky mess off Parker's chin with a napkin when the front door to the community center burst open, and a woman stumbled in, cradling her arm and wincing. Her long chestnut hair was damp from the rain, her white blouse streaked with mud, and her left wrist was already swelling. "Hey, whoa, are you okay?" Brady dropped the napkin and jogged over, catching her just before she lost her balance. "I think I twisted something," she said through clenched teeth, eyes wide with pain. Her voice was low and steady, even though she looked close to passing out. "I'm Brady. Come sit down," he said, guiding her carefully to the worn bench near the front desk. Parker peeked out from behind the juice-stained table, clutching his Captain America backpack like a shield. "Parker," Buddy grabbed the first aid kit from the kitchen, "Yes." The woman's eyes followed the little boy as he darted off. "Your son." "Yeah, my whole world. You're lucky it was us who found you. This place is usually dead on Saturday mornings." She gave a weak laugh. "Lucky's not how I'd describe today." Brady crouched in front of her and gently reached for her arm. "May I?" She hesitated, then nodded. Her skin was soft and her wrist was definitely sprained. "You're gonna need an X-ray," he said, "but I'll wrap it for now." "Thanks," she whispered. I slipped on the sidewalk outside. Was trying to wave down a cab. "Not from around here, huh?" She shook her head. "New to town." Parker returned with the box and Brady popped it open, pulling out the elastic bandage. "Well, welcome to Boston. I'm the unofficial EMT of this place, and you are." Willa Carson." Her name rolled off her tongue like something out of a movie. Willa Carson. He repeated it in his head as he carefully wrapped her wrist, trying not to notice how close she smelled like vanilla and rain. "You work here?" she asked. He looked up. "Volunteer. Clean, help with food drives, and run the kids' after-school program. It's a good place for Parker." "And your job?" He hesitated, taping down the bandage. "Used to be construction, got laid off 6 months ago, pick up side gigs now, whatever keeps the lights on." Willa looked at him with something unreadable in her eyes. "That's tough." Brady shrugged. "We're getting through it. I've got Parker. He makes everything worth it." "Brady," Parker tugged at his sleeve. "Her arm looks like Grandma's when she fell at the zoo." "Yeah, bud, but she's gonna be okay." Willa smiled at Parker. "Thanks for helping." He beamed. "You're welcome. Want me to draw you a picture?" Brady laughed. "He thinks drawings fix everything." "They kind of do," Willa said, her voice warmer now. "I'd love one." Parker grabbed his crayons and paper from his backpack and settled on the floor, already drawing what looked like a rainbow with a rocket in it. Brady sat beside Willa. "You really should see a doctor." "I will," she said, tucking wet hair behind her ear. "But thank you for helping me." "No problem. It's not every day someone walks in here looking like they just fell out of a Vogue shoot and ends up injured." She blushed, that obvious. "The shoes gave you away." Willa looked down at her soaked designer heels and laughed. "I guess I should have worn sneakers." "You guess right." A car horn honked outside. Willa looked up startled. "That's my driver." Brady blinked. "Driver." She stood, wincing slightly, but her posture straightened with practiced grace. "I'll be okay from here, really." He walked her to the door, Parker trailing behind. "Thanks again, Brady and Parker." He nodded, watching as the sleek black SUV pulled up. A man in a suit jumped out to open the door. Brady blinked again, a driver in a suit. Before he could ask, Willa turned and smiled softly. "Maybe I'll see you again." And like that, she was gone. 3 days passed. Brady tried not to think about her. But he did. He thought about her every night when he reheated Parker's dinner. Every morning when he walked past the bench where she sat, he couldn't explain it. Something about her stuck. So when she walked into the community center again on Wednesday afternoon, wearing jeans and a hoodie this time, no heels, no driver in sight, he nearly dropped the box of canned soup he was unpacking. "Hey," she said shyly, holding up a paper bag. "I brought cookies, thought the kids might like them." Parker squealed from across the room, "Willa." She grinned, "Hey, little artist." Brady stepped forward. "Willa, you didn't have to." "I wanted to, and I had some time. Figured I'd come by." He couldn't stop the smile tugging at his lips. "You're brave, showing up without bodyguards this time." She laughed, "I think I'll survive." He took the cookies and led her inside. "You sure you're okay?" "Wrist's healing. Doctor said it's just a sprain." "Glad to hear it." They sat while the kids played, talked about everything and nothing, her favorite foods, his failed lasagna attempt, the way Parker insisted on sleeping with 3 stuffed dinosaurs. She didn't offer much about herself, just that she was in town for work and staying a while. But that night, as she sat beside Brady watching Parker color another rocket, she looked at home. And Brady had no idea he was slowly falling for a woman who lived in a penthouse overlooking the Charles River, worth millions. All he saw was the woman who laughed at his dumb jokes, who brought cookies just to see Parker smile, who looked at him like he was more than a broke single dad trying to hold it together. And Willa. She was falling too harder than she ever expected. Especially for a man who didn't care about her money, because he didn't even know she had any. The third time Willa came to the community center, she brought a tray of lasagna and a question Brady wasn't ready for. "Do you ever think about leaving Boston?" she asked, setting the food down on the folding table beside a stack of juice boxes. Brady glanced up from tying Parker's boot. "You mean for a vacation?" "No, for good." He straightened, brushing his hands on his jeans as Parker bounded off toward the playroom. "Can't say I've had the luxury of that thought lately." Willa didn't press. Instead, she moved to unpack the paper plates and napkins she brought with the food. Her fingers were more careful now, her wrist still wrapped in a thin beige bandage. Brady noticed she never complained about the pain. He leaned against the table. "Why'd you ask?" She shrugged, but he could tell it wasn't casual. "I've just been thinking, what makes someone stay somewhere when it's not giving them much to hold on to?" Brady looked past her to where Parker was sitting cross-legged with a puzzle. "Sometimes, it's not about what the place gives you, it's who needs you in it." Willa followed his gaze and gave a thoughtful nod. "That makes sense." They didn't say much else while they served the food. The kids tore through the lasagna, and Parker declared it almost as good as Brady's spaghetti, which made Willa laugh in that unguarded way Brady was beginning to crave. After the cleanup, when the kids were watching a movie in the next room and the center had quieted, Willa lingered near the window, her arms folded across her chest. "I'm supposed to be in Paris next week," she said without turning around. Brady paused, unsure if he'd heard her right. "Like vacation Paris?" "No, meetings. I was going to fly out tomorrow night." He moved beside her. Outside, rain tapped against the glass. "So why are you still here?" She looked at him then, her eyes steady. "I don't want to leave yet." Brady didn't know what to say to that. He felt the air pull tight between them. He'd always been good at reading people, but Willa Carson was a 1,000-piece puzzle with no picture on the box. "You're not like the others," she said suddenly, voice low. "Most people I meet there, after something." "You think I'm not." "I think you don't even know what I have." Brady's brow furrowed. "I'm not trying to find out." "I know." They stood in silence for a beat too long, and then Brady cleared his throat. "We're doing a coat drive tomorrow. The boiler's been acting up in the south wing, and the kids are freezing during tutoring hours." Willa nodded slowly. "I'll bring what can." She left not long after, and Brady watched from the doorway as she walked off, not to a car, not to a waiting driver, but down the cracked sidewalk like she belonged there. The next morning, she returned with 5 oversized bags stuffed with new coats, hats, and gloves. Brady opened one and blinked at the tags. "These are brand new." "They'll last longer," she said simply. He didn't ask how she paid for them. He just nodded and carried them inside. Later that afternoon, after the last child had been picked up and Parker was building a fort out of folding chairs and blankets, Willa sat on the bench by the entrance, holding a cup of 2 sweet coffee Brady had brewed from the ancient machine in the back. "You used to build things," she said, staring into the cup. "Yeah, houses." "Do you miss it?" He tilted his head. "Sometimes. I liked seeing something go from dust to solid, something permanent. Feels good to make something last." Brady leaned against the doorframe. "Why get the feeling you're not talking about houses anymore?" She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Maybe I'm not." Before he could respond, Parker came racing over, dragging his blanket cape behind him. "Dad, Willa, come see my fort. It has a trapdoor." Willa stood, smiling. "Lead the way, superhero." They spent the next hour crawling through Parker's makeshift fortress, laughing when a folding chair collapsed and pretending to be chased by invisible dragons. Willa didn't once check her phone. She didn't once glance at the time. It wasn't until Parker had fallen asleep in a corner with his head on Willa's lap that Brady spoke again. "You're not just passing through, are you?" She looked down at the sleeping boy, brushing a curl off his forehead. "I thought I was." Brady's voice was quiet. "Then what changed?" Willa didn't answer right away. She just lifted her eyes to his. "You did." Brady felt something shift inside him, like a piece of his life had just clicked into place without warning. He didn't know what to do with that feeling, so he reached down and gently scooped Parker into his arms. "I should get him home." Willa stood too. "Can I walk you out?" They stepped into the cool night air together, the sky clear for once, stars scattered like spilled salt above them. At the curb, Willa hesitated. "Brady." He turned, adjusting Parker's weight on his shoulder. "I know I haven't told you everything, but I will." Brady met her gaze, steady and calm. "I don't need everything, just honest." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then I'll start there." She didn't kiss him, she didn't need to. But as he walked away, he felt something real settle in his chest, something warm and terrifying, and impossible to ignore. He didn't know who Willa Carson really was. But he was starting to hope he'd get the chance to find out. Willa hadn't planned to show up at Brady's doorstep on a Thursday night with a soaked umbrella, a bottle of wine, and a heart pounding so loud she could barely hear herself think. But that's exactly what she did. Brady opened the door slowly, confusion flickering across his face until he saw her standing there, hair pulled back in a loose twist, dressed in jeans and a navy jacket that still had a price tag tucked into the seam. He glanced down at the wine, then back up at her eyes. "You lost?" he asked, voice low and cautious. "No," she said, lifting the bottle. "Just figured you might need reinforcements. You mentioned Parker's science project was due tomorrow." He arched a brow. "You came all the way here to help with a shoebox volcano." "I needed an excuse." He hesitated, then stepped aside. "He's asleep, but I'm not." She walked in, water dripping from the umbrella onto the cracked tile. The apartment was warmer than she expected, even if the couch had a rip in the cushion and the coffee table was missing a leg and propped up with a stack of books. It didn't matter. The place felt lived in. Real. Brady shut the door behind her. You all right? I keep waiting for this to make sense, she said, setting the bottle on the counter. For you to look at me like I don't belong here, but you never do. Should I? I don't know, maybe. Most people do. He leaned on the counter, arms folded. You trying to tell me something, Willa? She met his eyes. Own a company. Several, actually. In tech, renewable energy, and a luxury brand inherited last year. My life before this was private jets, investment meetings, and dinners with people who care more about stock options than anything real. Brady didn't flinch. Why tell me now? Because I've been lying by omission, and I hate it. She stepped closer. I don't want you thinking I'm someone I'm not, and I also don't want you thinking this, she gestured between them, didn't mean something. Brady was quiet for a long moment. Then he pushed off the counter and walked past her to the cabinet, pulling down 2 mismatched glasses. You got a corkscrew. She blinked. Excuse me. You brought wine, might as well open it. I just told you I'm a millionaire. You told me you used to fly private, he said, holding out his hand. Doesn't change the fact that last week you helped Parker glue glitter to a cereal box and called it avant-garde. She handed him the corkscrew slowly. You're not mad. I'm not happy you didn't tell me sooner, he said, twisting the cork free. But no, I'm not mad. He poured a generous amount into each glass and handed her one. So, she asked, voice cautious. I'm trying to process, he said, taking a sip. But here's what I know, my kid likes you. You've never made me feel less than, and you brought wine. She let out a soft laugh, tension easing from her shoulders. He set his glass down, but I've got questions. Ask them. Why here? Why this center? Why me? Willa leaned against the counter, the glass cool in her hands. Because I was tired of being around people who only saw what I could give them. I wanted something real. I wanted to feel human again. And me. You were kind to a stranger. You didn't flinch when I looked like hell. You didn't ask me for anything. She looked at him, voice steady. You made me feel like I mattered not because of what I have, but because of who I was in that moment. I didn't realize how rare that was until I met you. Brady exhaled slowly. I've spent the last year trying to hold everything together with duct tape and prayer. You walking into my life was the first thing that felt like maybe things were shifting. Maybe I hadn't lost everything. You haven't, she said softly. He looked at her for a long time. So what happens now? I don't know, she admitted, but I'd like to find out with you. They stood there, glasses in hand, the hum of the fridge the only sound between them. Then Brady set his drink down and crossed the room. He stopped just inches away from her, his eyes searching hers. You're not just visiting anymore, are you? No, she whispered, I'm not. He leaned in, brushing his lips against hers, tentative, testing, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to want this. But when she kissed him back, slow and certain, all hesitation vanished. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was deliberate and grounding, like 2 people finally finding the center of gravity they didn't know they'd been spinning toward. When they pulled apart, Willa rested her forehead against his. Brady. Yeah, I already told my team I'm not going to Paris. He smiled faintly. So what'd you tell them? That I met someone worth staying for. He didn't reply right away. He just pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her like she belonged there. And for the first time in a long time, he believed maybe, just maybe, she did. Brady stood in the middle of the community center's main hall, the scent of fresh paint still thick in the air. The place looked different now, new lights installed, the ceiling finally patched up, and the heater in the south wing humming steadily for the first time in months. He'd spent the last 3 days working with a small team of volunteers to prep for tonight's fundraiser, but none of it would have happened without Willa. She'd never made a dramatic reveal. No press coverage, no grand announcement. Just quiet checks written under a foundation's name, supplies delivered without fanfare, and a few persistent phone calls to city officials who suddenly returned Brady's messages within the hour. The transformation had been swift but purposeful, just like her. "Dad, look." Parker tugged on his sleeve and pointed to the stage, where a group of kids were giggling behind a homemade curtain made of bed sheets. "We added lights." "You did," Brady grinned, crouching beside him. "Looks like a real stage now." Willa appeared at the edge of the room, her hair pinned back with a jeweled clip, a dark blue coat wrapped around her. She caught Brady's eye and gave a slight nod that said more than any words could. He walked toward her, heart thudding with something heavier than nerves' anticipation. "I didn't expect this many people," she said, glancing around the packed hall where folding chairs had been set up in neat rows. "Neither did I," Brady said. "Apparently word got out." Willa reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. "This came for you. It was delivered to the foundation's office by mistake." He opened it slowly, reading the city seal at the top. His eyes scanned the page once, then again. "They approved the grant." "They did." He looked up, stunned. "I didn't even think it was still under review." "I may have encouraged them to revisit it. Mentioned the heating repairs and the new educational resources." "Willa," he stopped himself, shaking his head. "How do I even begin to thank you?" "You don't," she said. "Just use it. Build something lasting. That's what you said you missed, right?" Brady folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket. "You made that possible." She glanced down at her hands. "I wanted to do something that mattered." Before he could respond, a woman in a red blazer approached them. "Excuse me, are you the organizer?" she asked Brady. "I am." "I'm with the Boston Globe," she said, holding up a press badge. "We're running a feature on community revitalization projects. Would you be open to an interview?" Brady hesitated, then looked at Willa. "Go," she said quietly. "This is your story." He nodded and followed the reporter, but not before squeezing Willa's hand once firm, certain. She watched him go, her throat tightening. Parker found her a few minutes later and grabbed her hand. "We're doing the play now. You have to sit in the front." She let him pull her toward the front row, where she sat between two older women and clapped as the makeshift curtain was pulled aside. The kids performed a chaotic but charming version of a fairy tale, complete with cardboard swords and a papier-mâché dragon. Every time Parker said a line, he looked at her for approval. She gave it with every smile, every clap, every tear she blinked away before it could fall. After the play, Brady returned to her side, his cheeks flushed from the interview. "They want to come back next week," he said. "Do a full profile on the center." "You deserve that." "I want you in it too." She shook her head. "This is your win." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then share it with me." She looked at him, her voice quiet. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything." The music started, then a local band playing acoustic near the back, and kids began pulling their parents up to dance. Parker ran over and tugged at Brady's sleeve. "Come on, you promised." Brady laughed. All right, all right." He turned to Willa. "You coming?" She hesitated, then offered her hand to Parker. "Only if I get to dance with the star of the show." Parker beamed and dragged her onto the floor. The three of them danced clumsily, joyfully under the warm lights. Willa let herself laugh without restraint, spinning Parker while Brady watched with something bright and unguarded in his eyes. When the music slowed, Brady pulled her close. "So what happens after this?" She rested her head against his chest. "Stay. Already told my assistant to start transferring things permanently. I'm not going back. He didn't ask how she'd manage it, she always found a way. Instead, he said, I've been thinking about starting a construction mentorship program here. For the teens who age out of the after-school program, teach them trades. Show them how to build something that lasts. She smiled, then let's build it together. Brady leaned down, his lips brushing hers with the kind of certainty that only comes after everything else has fallen into place. It wasn't a question anymore. It wasn't a maybe. It was home. The fundraiser ended late, and the hall slowly emptied until only a few volunteers remained. Parker had fallen asleep in a pile of jackets near the stage. Brady scooped him up and turned to Willa. You coming back with us? She nodded, pulling on her coat. If you'll have me. He chuckled, I already do. They walked out into the night, the air crisp and clear. Brady paused before unlocking the car, looking at her under the streetlight. You know, he said, if you told me a month ago that the woman who'd change everything for me would walk in bleeding and covered in mud, I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have either, Willa said. But I'm glad it happened. She stepped closer, so am I. They drove home in silence, Parker asleep in the back seat, his hand curled around his favorite toy. Willa sat beside Brady, her fingers laced with his, the city blurring past the windows. When they reached the apartment, she helped carry Parker upstairs, tucking him into bed while Brady stepped out to turn off the lights in the kitchen. She returned to the living room to find him standing at the window, watching the quiet street below. He turned when she approached. You're staying tonight. I'm staying, she said, her voice soft but sure. For good. Brady didn't say anything. He just reached for her hand and led her to the couch, where they sat in the quiet, the warmth of the room wrapping around them like a promise. No more hiding, no more guessing. Just the quiet certainty of two people who had found their way to something real. Together. Willa traced her fingers over the edge of the envelope in her lap, the gold foil seal still unbroken. She sat near the window of Brady's apartment, Parker's soft laughter echoing from the other room where he was playing with a set of hand-me-down action figures from one of the center volunteers. Outside, snow had started to fall in slow, lazy spirals, an early winter surprise. Brady stepped out of the kitchen, drying his hands on a dish towel. You've read that thing 5 times without opening it. I haven't read it, Willa replied, glancing up. I'm still deciding. He leaned on the doorframe, watching her with that quiet steadiness she'd come to lean on. You're not usually one for indecision. She turned the envelope slowly in her hand. It's from my board. They're asking me to officially return as CEO, full reinstatement. Offices in New York and Zurich. A private team, everything I used to have. Brady's jaw shifted slightly, and I haven't said yes. He walked over and slid onto the couch beside her. You don't need to ask what I think. I know what you think, she said, laying the envelope on the coffee table. But I needed to say it out loud, to realize that I don't want it, not like that, not if it means going back to who I was before. Brady exhaled slowly. You told me once you wanted something real. Is this it? She looked around the room, the worn quilt Parker had insisted she use when she napped on the couch, the drawing he'd taped to the wall that said Willa's Fort Rules, and the framed photo Brady had quietly placed on the shelf last week, all 3 of them at the fundraiser, laughing in mid-motion. This is the first time I've felt like I'm where I belong. He reached for her hand and folded it in his, then say no. I will, she said, but I want to do something else first. Brady raised an eyebrow. I've been thinking about starting a trust, not just a donation, something long-term, for the center. Scholarships, job training, building renovations, maybe even a second location someday. It wouldn't be under my name, it'd be for the community. Brady's expression shifted, something deeper settling behind his eyes. That's a big deal. I know, but I want to build it with you. He looked at her for a long time, then said, Then let's make it happen. She leaned forward and kissed him slow and sure, nothing hesitant or uncertain. When she pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. You're not going to regret this, he said. I already don't. Later that week, they stood together in front of a modest brick building on the edge of the city one that had been vacant for nearly a year. Willa had found it through a contact, and after a quick tour, Brady was already envisioning blueprints in his mind. This could be the second center, she said. West Side's been underfunded for years. Brady nodded, his mind already mapping out classrooms, a tech lab, a workshop. We'd need permits, a crew, funding. I've got that part covered, Willa replied, tucking her arm into his. You bring the vision, I'll bring the scaffolding. He grinned. You ever do things halfway? Not anymore. They spent the next 2 months drafting plans, meeting with city officials, and building a team. Willa's foundation quietly began acquiring nearby lots for future expansion. Brady worked late into the night, designing the center from the ground up this time, not just as a place for kids, but as a launch pad for futures. The night before construction broke ground, Brady surprised Willa with a candlelit dinner on the roof of the building that would soon become their second home. You did all this? She asked, stepping onto the rooftop strung with fairy lights and warmed with patio heaters. I had help, he said. Your assistant might have given me a few tips. She laughed, settling into the chair he pulled out for her. This is beautiful. So are you, he said, not looking away. They ate in the quiet glow of the city, the hum of traffic below a distant murmur. After dessert, Brady stood and walked around the table toward her. I've been thinking about this for a while, he said. You and me, building this life. It's more than I ever thought I'd have again. She stood too, uncertain now, her heart thudding. I never needed a penthouse or a private jet, he continued. But I needed someone who saw me, who believed in what I could do when I stopped surviving and started living, and that person is you. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring simple, elegant, with a single oval diamond nestled in a band of white gold. Willa Carson, will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes, she breathed, her eyes filling. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him, laughing through tears. They kissed under the lights, the city stretching around them, the stars above bearing silent witness to the moment that changed everything again. The wedding was small and perfect. Held in the newly completed center's main hall, it was filled with the people who mattered: volunteers, kids from the programs, and a few close friends who had become family. Parker acted as ring bearer and insisted on wearing a cape with his suit, because heroes need style. Willa wore a dress with a satin ribbon Parker had chosen himself. Brady stood at the altar in a suit that didn't quite hide the calluses on his hands, and when they said their vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. You gave me more than a home, Willa whispered. You gave me a reason to stay still. And you gave me something to believe in again, Brady said, voice rough. You made me brave enough to dream. They kissed to applause and cheers, and Parker shouted, Now we're a real team. Afterward, they danced under strings of lights, while the kids chased each other through the halls, and the volunteers toasted with sparkling cider. Willa looked around at everything they'd built together, and knew she would never trade this life for anything. Not even the world. Some months later, Willa sat on the porch of their new home, a restored brownstone not far from the center, watching Parker race across the yard with a kite. Brady came out, handing her a mug of tea, and sat beside her. Construction on the new wing starts next week, he said. I saw the plans, It's going to be perfect. He took her hand, their wedding bands catching the afternoon light. So is this. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You know what I've realized? What? I used to think I had everything when I had nothing real. Now I have less, and it's everything. He kissed the top of her head. You've got more than you think. You've got me, you've got him, and you've got a future that's just getting started. They watched Parker run, the kite soaring above him, laughter filling the air. And for the first time in either of their lives, everything was exactly as it should be. Forever,